Hey, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Dynamite Show. And joining me, Paul Fontaine, is a guy who I saw wrestling last week on AEW Dark. That really, you made an impression. Big Trouble Ben Bishop, as you can see. So yeah, I reached out to Ben, and I actually did a little research. I saw an article that was in the the Castleton Spartan last year.
Castleton University newspaper written by a Castleton student.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you're a former basketball player, which
Yes,
if
correct.
anybody watched you would not be
Did
surprised.
your research, Paul?
Yeah. You bill yourself as 6'12".
6'12", 15% of a metric ton.
Which I love. That's great. And I got to tell you, man, I watch, I don't watch Dark every week, but, I try to get to it when I can. And it's not very often that the guy that's brought in as, enhancement talent stands out.
Nice way to say it.
Yeah.
The taboo word.
You really did. I mean, they gave you more than they normally, will let people do. You had the nice little comedy spot with a -1.
Mm-hmm.
Where he stood up to you and he came up to your knees, and then they did the chicken spot. And you've got the goods. Like, you're trained by James Ellsworth, right?
Yes, trained by James Ellsworth. I started training in 2019.
Okay.
Funny story about that. I just went to a show as a fan, and it was James Ellsworth's promotion. It's called Adrenaline Championship Wrestling here in Maryland.
Okay. All right.
And I just went. It was a Friday night. I had nothing else going on. I'm like, you know what? I haven't gone to an independent wrestling show in a long time. I'm like, let's check it out. So I went, saw, just standing in the back. Anytime I've ever walked into an independent wrestling show, people just kind of look at me. Me being my humble self, I didn't want to take away from anybody, so I wanted to stand in the back, stay away. Eventually, at an intermission, actually, Dwayne Gill came up to me. It was just like, "Hey, man, are you a worker?" And I was like, I have a job. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know the lingo really. I was a fan. I didn't try to be too much of like that smart Mark who knows the inside lingo.
Sure.
And so he's like, no, man, are you a wrestler? And so I've always wanted to be. And he goes, I got to introduce you to Jimmy. And I didn't know who Jimmy was. And then, he walks me up to James Ellsworth. So, and the rest is kind of history. Next day I started training. Cool. I went to the shows and have been helping out at shows. And fast forward to now in 2022. And things have been moving in the I'd say right direction. I don't think that's definitely not the wrong direction.
No, I mean, it's like for 3 years in, and that company, and now you're doing some work for Invictus. I saw, right, which is James's promotion, and
Invictus is not James Ellsworth's promotion.
Oh, sorry.
ACW is James Ellsworth's promotion in Maryland. Invictus is in Jersey.
Okay.
And a newer promotion started in 2020 and been growing ever since steadily. Really awesome promotion in Northern Jersey. Runs out of the mecca of independent wrestling there in Jersey, Field Park Knights of Columbus, which many people in the Northeast know what that is, and many independent wrestlers have wrestled there. So that's a great promotion. Another one I work with.
So, and I've heard of them. I don't think I've ever seen any of their shows. One that I've been watching a lot lately is the same area. I don't know if you've heard of it. Catalyst Wrestling.
I have heard of Catalyst. Yeah. Same area. I have been in touch with them, and hopefully, eventually I'm able to link up and we can do some business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of level it seems like you're at, in terms of like, if you're coming up, obviously, so, you take those opportunities, to get on a big stage like AEW whenever you can get it, obviously. And as long as they treat you well. And they did. I mean, you lost, but they did not make you look bad, and they do.
No.
And you held yourself well. Like, you've obviously got the skills.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Paul. When I went into the match, obviously we know what it is, right? All of us enhancement talent know exactly what we're getting out of it. It's a chance for us to showcase, ourself, our skill, more importantly, and I think more important than actually the wrestling skill is the character and your TV persona, or just how you come across on camera. And that's something that James Ellsworth has really told me that's what sets apart good wrestlers from great wrestlers, is their camera presence.
Well, look at
And that's
him. I mean, he's like,
exactly.
look at the way he looks,
Oh,
and
he knows, he admits it.
yeah, and I mean, and he made an
Yeah,
impression.
he did.
He
He
got
did.
over.
He
Yeah,
needed every little thing. He needed to do all the little things very well because he didn't have the
yeah,
body, didn't have the look. But he's a good wrestler, but he's not like, the Daniel Bryans or those type
right.
of, the greatest technical wrestlers, but he had the ability to talk, and he had such a natural charisma that many
Mhm.
people, with the eye test, everyone's going to write him off. And they're not going to
Yeah,
think anything of him, but he was able to captivate people just by his facials and how he was able to cut promos, whether he was a face when he started at WWE to being a heel, towards his later runs in WWE. So that he's instilled that on me. He's told me from the get-go, the wrestling is not the most important part of professional wrestling. It's the character, it's the personality, the charisma. And that's what I tried to exude on the screen when I was at AEW, because I know, like, hey, I only got 5-6 minutes here. And that's
Mhm.
from when 10
Yeah,
walks out of the curtain to when I'm walking to the back.
and
That's
you
the
don't even
time.
get an entrance. I mean,
No,
you did in the
I'm the
building. Yeah,
I'm the already in the ring guy.
yeah,
But no, so you gotta maximize every single one of those minutes. You can't leave anything to be desired. And I see a lot of guys that are on Dark, and I get it, because the first time I was on it for a little bit, I showed my personality, but definitely showed more this time, a little bit more
mhm,
comfortable this time, and had nothing to do with my opponent. Bear Bronson was a great opponent.
yeah,
It was an awesome first experience there. It was just my first experience on a big stage like that. Um, this time I just felt more comfortable. And what was even more comforting about it is that I I work independent wrestling shows. A
mhm,
lot of guys and gals nowadays, they don't work a lot of indie shows, even if they are at the AWWE or
yeah,
AEW level. When I walked into that building, Studio 19 in Universal Studios, I'm looking around. I'm like, this is just an indie show.
yeah,
I'm like,
totally.
look at
Yeah,
there's about 300 people here. So
yeah,
I'm feeling like I'm just feeling comfortable. It's like a normal Saturday,
yeah,
right? So I'm just like, I'm not what I did that day most likely wouldn't I wouldn't have done on if it was an actual TV show in a big arena. But what you got to do is that I played to the crowd. I looked at the crowd. I interacted with people in the crowd, which is what
yeah,
a big thing on indie shows, what you have to kind of do. And I was just used to it. And so that kind of came off on screen, is that like, oh my, he has all this personality. It's like, yeah, just this is how I am at indie shows. I talk a
mhm.
lot. I saw a lot of comments where people are like, he's really chatty. He's chattier than a lot of the other extras. And I'm like, yeah, that's just how my character is. I do this.
Well,
It's something that comes naturally to me. On
well,
these indie shows.
and I mean, and so people will talk about, Darker Elevation, and they'll say, well, it's not Dynamite or Rampage, so, quote unquote, nobody is watching. But you know what? You got like, there's like 250,000 views on these shows. So I mean,
Hmm.
for a guy like you, or for some of these other people that, this is the biggest exposure you're gonna get, like
Yeah.
at this point in your
At
career.
this point,
Hopefully,
yeah. Yeah.
down the road. I mean, you're 32, which is, a little older, but you're a young 32. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't
Well,
look
31, I'm not 32
okay,
until a few
sorry.
weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, you look
Like
at
2
you
weeks.
and you don't, and even physically, like
Yeah.
your body hasn't been beat up. Like some guys that
Mhm.
are 32, they might as well be 45. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
and whereas you, like, you could do this for another 10 years,
Oh, yeah,
easy,
absolutely.
easy.
My body
Yeah,
feels better than it ever has, because I played competitive college basketball, Division 1,
yeah,
and, that beat up my body big time. Yeah, I had the
sure,
knees and the
yeah,
back stuff, but I've learned how to train better, how to eat
mhm,
better, and I feel the best that I've felt probably it, I don't even know since when. I
yeah,
I became, and this is something that Bill Walton always said. He said that
oh yeah,
he didn't know what it felt like not to be in pain. He just thought that was normal. And he walked around. He's like, I never realized what it was. That was me for a long time. I didn't know what it was like not to be in pain. My leg or my back or my knees or something.
yeah,
But now it's like I don't feel that anymore. I really take care of my body, whether it be yoga, chiropractor, working out smarter,
mhm,
um, it just and listening to my body, that type of stuff. It's I feel better than I did when I was 23. I couldn't have done this when I was 23. My body was beat up from basketball. There was no possible way I would have been able to even attempt to try to take a bump, or I probably would have broken half. So,
and then you hadn't learned to listen to your body yet.
Exactly. So it comes. People say like, oh, you started at 29, and that's a little bit older. Yeah, it is. It depends on who you ask. Some people are like, oh, you're young. That's fine. Ellsworth says all the time, he's like, I wish I didn't start till I was 27, to be completely honest with you, because he started when he was 17. So, it's a little later, but at the same time, it comes with more maturity, right?
Look at a guy like Filthy Tom Lawler, who didn't really get going full time in wrestling till he was like 34, and he's killing it right now.
My favorite wrestler of all time is Kevin Nash. And Kevin Nash didn't get started until he was 29, 30 years old. DDP is one of my favorite wrestlers. Didn't get started really till he was 36.
Kevin Nash, I mean, that's your blueprint.
It is, yeah. I get that a lot. I see the people saying like, "Oh, he's like Kevin Nash." And that when I first started watching wrestling, he was the first guy I saw. So I was a big WCW fan before I watched WWE.
Yeah.
1997, 98 is when I started watching wrestling.
Okay.
And the first person I saw as soon as I turned the TV on was Kevin Nash, and that's what attracted me to professional wrestling. I was like, look at this big guy. Like, exactly. Yeah, no pun intended. He is. He's so cool. Yeah. He had this like charisma and this swagger to him. And I'm like, that's cool. And I love the guy. I love watching Taker. I love watching Kane. I just knew when I started wrestling, I'm like, I don't want to be the big brooding big guy and like the dark, guy who doesn't talk and all he does is choke slam and all he does is I don't want to be that. And people were telling me, I'm like, but it's just not me. It would feel so uncomfortable. Kudos to those guys who were able to take those characters and make them what they were. But I just wasn't going to be that, and it wasn't going to ever work for me. So I try to just do something different and not just be that normal, mute big guy who just stands there and tries to look intimidating. And as people saw in the last AEW Dark match, they saw I try to exude as much personality as possible, talk during my matches, show that cocky, overconfident heel persona that I possess when I'm portrayed as a heel.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what that Big Trouble character is, that 80s, 90s throwback big guy, with the kind of persona of my favorite movie of all time is Big Trouble in Little China. So that's where the name came from. Cool. And that like lovable jerk that you see in those type of movies, like the Jack Burtons, or Roddy Piper's character in They Live, those type of characters are kind of where I try to mesh my character after.
Cool. So they brought you in because you say you're based in Maryland and you were at the Orlando tapings, right? Or Universal Studios. So did they flow you down there, or do you have to get down?
Yeah, you had to take care of the transportation yourself. They did the first time I went there. They took care of the lodging. This time I did, and I understand that's kind of how it goes. You got to take the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And fortunately, I have a day job, and I got the opportunity to do that. So I'm very fortunate in that sense. But so they brought me down for the second time, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah, hopefully maybe next time they're in your area. I just saw they booked a building.
I'm actually moving. I'm moving to Atlanta March 19th.
Okay, cool.
So I'll be. I know. I saw they'll be.
You're right close to the Nightmare Factory.
Yeah. And I've spoken with QT about that.
Oh, cool.
And that he was the one I first started being in contact with at AEW.
Yeah.
And who I went through to be booked on these shows.
Okay.
On Dark. So I let him know, and we'll see what happens. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing and try to just take it day by day. One of the things I tell a lot of people when it comes to wrestling, because there's so many peaks and valleys in wrestling. There's so many ups and downs. Coming from a background of playing sports, I understood that, and I know how that goes. You can have a great game, and 2 days later you can have a bad game, and then your coach loves you one day in practice, coach hates you the next day in practice. Wrestling's kind of the same. One day, AEW Dark, and then I was involved. Then I was on one of the Barstool Sports podcasts, and this and that, and it's getting all this views and all this love. And the next week, no one's talking about you anymore, and you don't have that. You're not hearing back.
And then you're on the Dynamite show.
Exactly. Yeah. No. This now this is a plus, right?
Yeah. There you go.
No. So yeah. So no. So it's like there's so many ups and downs, and it's so important in wrestling. With those peaks and valleys, you got to stay plateaued. You got to understand that like you can't get too high, you can't get too low. You got to just kind of stay the course, because this will drive you insane, and it really will. And I get it why so many people, get so burnt out from it, because you're reaching out to bookers and you're reaching out to promoters and you're not hearing anything back, and you're like, what the hell's wrong with me? Like I was just, and sometimes you get that thought in your head. I was just on AEW Dark and I got great reactions from these fans and these people, and like, why aren't you responding to me? Why aren't you responding to a guy who looks way different than every single person on the independent wrestling circuit right now? There's not many people, and this is not me talking in character. No. It's kind of also me talking realistic. There aren't many people that look like me who have the size, the look, the personality. There's not many. Yeah. It's few and far between. So it makes me wonder, like, what else? What are you missing? What are you looking for? One of the things I hate the most, Paul, and this is one of the biggest pet peeves of mine, is that promoters who say, we already have a big guy. Oh, we already have a 7-foot guy. The most popular time in wrestling was in the late 90s, and there was about 10 to 12 guys over 6'8" on the roster. They never said, oh no, we don't need another big guy. If they did that, we wouldn't have never seen people like Test or Big Show or Kane or Taker. No, they would have been fine with one guy. They would have one of them, and that's it. Yeah. So that's one of the things I've always said. Like, what does that mean? Like, big guys need to wrestle other big guys. So why do you want one? You have 50 guys that are 5'9" and 160 pounds. You never say we already have a 5'9", 160-pound guy. You don't say that. So why only one big guy?
And usually when it is like a big guy like you, like, so my immediate thought is, okay, if this guy's not signed, there's something he's missing. But I watched your match and I saw the wrestling ability. I saw the natural charisma that you can't teach. I saw the size that you can't teach. You're 7 foot tall and you can't teach that. Yeah, right.
He took that. I wish I thought of that a few years before.
Trust me. So we've got this Facebook group that, a lot of wrestling insiders and stuff are in, and bookers and wrestlers and, are in, that I interact with a lot. And that's where this whole Fight Game Media started. And when I brought you up and I put a picture of you with 10, it's the same one I put on Twitter, and immediately, 7 feet tall, and you can't teach that. But then I'm thinking, okay, so maybe he can't talk. But you know what? Like, I mean, I've been talking to you for 18 minutes now. You can talk. I mean, I can see it naturally. And the thing is, like, especially now you mentioned in your reply to me on Twitter that, because I made the comment, oh, I wonder why he hasn't been at the PC, or maybe he has. And you said they have, and they're not interested, and it's like, well, I know enough about AEW that, for me, you're perfect for that company. Because, like, number one, I think MJF's gonna be needing a new bodyguard soon, but that's a whole other issue. But even without that, I mean, you stand out. I mean, they build 10 as this brick shithouse, and you towered over him, and you can work. So I mean, and you don't have miles on your body. So I mean, you could be an asset for that company for. Like, I don't know why you're not on GCW. I don't know why you're not wrestling.
Well, I can see GCW. I wonder how the GCW crowd would take to me.
Well, they might look at you like they probably start chanting Von Wagner at you or something.
Yeah, I've gotten Von. I'm the better looking version of Von Wagner.
Well, totally. Yeah.
I say that to everybody.
You're like 10 times better than Von Wagner. I saw that in like a 3-minute match.
Yeah. I don't know.
He's 10 years younger than you, and he's got the pedigree. So
he's got the pedigree. He's got the age on me, and that was one thing. When I went to the PC in 2021, it was February of over a year ago, and it was funny because there was about 12 guys there. It was only guys, no girls, so 12 guys there, and it was 6 non-wrestlers and 6 6 wrestlers. So it was 6 independent wrestlers. I was part of the 6 independent wrestlers.
6 non-wrestlers.
The 5 of them quit.
Oh,
like
wow.
within like the first session. So they just said,
Okay.
screw this. We don't want to be here. So there was
Okay.
one. So there was one non-wrestler, and he was like a kickboxer. So he
Okay.
had some of that kind of background, like the fighting background.
Yeah.
So he understood the roles and all that type of
Mhm.
stuff. And everybody else, the other five, including me, were independent wrestlers. And that was around the time where things were starting to question some things. It was
Yeah.
Canyon Seaman talked to us at the end and did say only seven of us were there at the end, and it was they didn't hold back on the tryout. They
Mhm.
definitely kept us going through the ringer where normally 30 people go through these drills, but now there's only seven of us. So,
Yeah.
and we're taking the whole time. So, Canyon Seaman said to us, and he sounded cryptic towards it, of like basically him just saying, I have no clue where this is going.
Yeah.
And you can hear from us tomorrow. You might never hear from us, or you might hear from us next week, 3 months, 6
Yeah.
months, 9 months. I don't know. And what I learned is that actually one of the individuals at the tryout was basically all ready to sign without just putting his name on the dotted line.
Yeah.
And he was even looking for places in Orlando.
Wow.
And at the last second, they said, actually, you know what? We're looking to stay under 25. And he was
Okay.
20, he was like 20, 28, 29.
So,
So they said, forget it.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it's because that was around that time period when you were starting to
Yeah.
see things change a little bit.
Well, that's the new edict, right? 25 and under
25
for
and under,
guys,
over 6 foot. So
and
that's
20, I think it's 23 for the women.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's crazy. Yeah.
I'm not going to lie and say it's not disheartening. It definitely is, but I've come to terms with it. Right. So
Well,
I've
the cool
understood.
thing is you have an option now. Like, if
Yeah,
this was 5
exactly.
years ago, you got one company. And now,
Exactly.
and AEW doesn't seem to have those barriers. You know what?
No,
If you can get over,
mhm.
and if you can work,
Yeah.
and so there you go. The one thing I'll say, the indie scene has, on one hand, it's never been hotter, but on
Mhm.
the other hand, it's never been harder, because
Mhm.
there's so many talented people out there that just got released. Like
Exactly.
WWE's released like 85 people in the last year. So these are the
Mhm.
guys you're competing with for work.
That's true. And
Yeah.
people say, like, and I actually brought that up on Twitter a few months back during the last like mass releases of probably in
Yeah.
like November. And everyone's like, this is so great for the independent circuit. This is
No.
amazing. Like this is gonna rejuvenate independent wrestling. And then I said, well, hold on.
Yeah.
Because now once, Joe Schmo independent wrestler tries to get to that, is starting to build up. It's like, okay, now, I'm starting to make a name for myself. Oh, maybe these bigger companies with a little bit more exposure on the indie scene will bring me in. Then I'll, get more credibility. And then all of a sudden 30 NXT wrestlers get released. And now you go back down the ladder and you're right back
Exactly.
to where you were. And people bring them in. And unfortunately, the money in independent wrestling isn't as much as there used to be. So, and to
Especially
speak
for a
frankly,
guy that's starting out.
especially,
If you gotta
yeah,
pay, $1,000 for a guy that just got cut from NXT, all of a sudden you went from 100 to 25.
exactly that,
Yeah.
they're sacrificing bringing in a couple of guys that might charge whatever. Let's just say
Yeah.
100, but you're paying a guy 1,000. Now you can't use those guys.
Right?
Now maybe you didn't make your money back, and now you can't run another show. So now you're done. Until
Yeah.
the tax returns come in next year.
Oh.
And
You can
that's
do 3 shows.
yeah, exactly. Get your 3 shows out of the way with your tax returns. That's why you see all the shows pop up in March
Yeah.
and April.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the nature of the beast. And I brought that up, and people were like, "Well, no, this so and so's here, and so and so's going to be on the indie scene, and so and so." I'm like, "Yeah, that's great, but what about for you and me? What are we
Yeah.
going to get? Are we going to get those spots, or they're going to get them?" And I'm not saying they shouldn't get them. I'm not saying
Sure.
they're
No.
accomplished, and but it's a bummer, and that's what really is hard. That's why it's so hard to navigate, and why indie wrestling is so difficult, because these promoters, they want to make money,
Yeah.
and some of these individuals that are getting released, they're charging big money, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, we're going to get a big audience. That's not always the case. It doesn't happen really
No,
that way.
and if they're, and so if a promoter chooses to pay them, it's not like that guy's gonna make the enough difference in the gate to make up for the amount of money that he's charging. So you got to
Exactly.
try to figure out a way to save money elsewhere, like you mentioned, or you're losing your ass.
Yeah, if you're
So
saving,
yeah.
like, for example, and this isn't tooting my own horn by any means, but people come to see things that look different, right? See people that look different.
Yep.
A lot of individuals will see me, and like a casual fan will see me, and they'll continue to come to the ACW shows. Now, obviously, I'm not charging as much as somebody that was on TV, because I shouldn't charge as much as somebody that was on TV, because I'm not as worth somebody that was on TV. But some casual fans, especially kids, will look and be like, look at that guy. Look at the 7-foot guy. I want to look at him. I want to look at him. I'm going to keep coming to see him. And then they see someone that was maybe on NXT for a few years. They're like, well, I don't really know who that is. Like, I don't, they don't get it, And so the parents keep coming back. It's like, oh, my kid loved it. I'm going to keep going back.
So it's almost like you've got to, until people get to know who you are, you just got to stand out with the chances that you get. And then as people see you, they're going to remember, hey, who's that big guy?
Exactly.
I love the name. I mentioned that article and I saw, okay, this isn't your shoot name. And Ben Bishop, I know Ben Bishop, and I keep remembering, am I getting this name right? Because as you can see from behind me, I'm a hockey fan. Of course, I know Ben Bishop, and Ben Bishop was a goalie mainly for the Dallas Stars. I think he played for a couple other teams, and he was a real tall guy as well. I think he was like 6'8" or 6'10" or something.
When I chose the name, I saw the name pop up, and I'm like, oh well, you know what, whatever. I'm not a hockey fan, so I didn't really know of him at all. I think he retired.
I think so. Yeah.
So great.
He came in. He came up around 2005, I think. So
yeah. Okay, great. So so I'm the only one left. I will take that, and so I hope I can. He bestows the name Ben Bishop. Gives me the gives me his blessing to use the name.
Yeah, and you'll take it to a new level.
Yeah. Well, Ben's my name. That's my shoot name. Yeah. So I'm halfway there.
And the big trouble sticks out as well. That's a great gimmick.
Yeah. It's one day we were sitting around at training, and I was just trying to come up with a gimmick, and one guy, an independent wrestler by the name of Vic Ramone, wrestles here in Maryland, and he said, what's your favorite movie? What do you like? I'm like, I went through. I'm like, I really love those campy 80s movies, like They Live and Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China. And he stopped me. He's like, that's it.
It is. Yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, why don't you just be Big Trouble? And I was like, as I was trying to stay away from anything like big something a little, because I was just kind of like, it's so overused. But then I'm like, that sounds too good. Like
it rolls off the tongue. It's great.
Yeah.
So we're just about out of time, but before we do, I want to just give you a chance. Is there a match that you're particularly proud of, that people is accessible enough that people could go watch, as opposed to like an enhancement match?
Yeah. So actually, one of two matches come to mind that I'm really proud of. One was at GSW. It happened back in August. It aired actually on Thanksgiving Day on their YouTube channel, Global Syndicate Wrestling. It was me versus Wrecking Ball Legursky. Wrecking Ball is familiar with Wrecking Ball? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We wrestled a lot in 2021. We actually just past Sunday wrestled at Invictus in a tag match. So
cool.
Formerly trained by Bully Ray. Awesome talent working in the NWA right now with Jay Bradley as the Fixers. I was really proud of that match. And also after that, the match I'm really proud of is that back in December at PWX, I worked Alexander Hammerstone.
Oh, I'm real familiar with him.
Yeah. MLW,
cool dude.
MLW champ, awesome guy. Yeah. And we had a real solid match at, I did some things out of my comfort zone in that match. Took a stalling suplex, which, you don't see a lot of 7-footers do. He's strong as a goddamn ox. So, he's able to do that.
I'm just picturing that match in my head right now. And I'm going to
watch that tonight. The only way that would have made it. The only way that would have made it better is if we had a bigger ring. The ring was a 16 by 16. We definitely could have used at least an 18. But I was really proud because I was able to, keep up with a guy who's the MLW champ. And at the time he was, because it was in December. So those are the two matches that really stick out. Cool. And it gave me a lot of confidence that, like, okay, I can, hang in the ring with some of these guys that have been doing it for, 8, 9, 10 years. And it made me feel a lot better. Like, okay, I'm starting to get to that next level where I can be trusted in the ring with these guys, and it's not like oh man, this guy stinks, like compared to this other guy. Now it's like, okay, this is all believable, and I could see him working these individuals.
So if you're watching on YouTube, you can check those out. I'll link it in the show notes as well. So in GSW against Wrecking Ball Legursky, and in PWX against Alexander Hammerstone from MLW. Yep. And hopefully the next time we see you in AEW, it'll be on Dynamite or Rampage.
I hope so. I'm trying to get that Dynamite or Rampage payday. That's what I'm worried. Absolutely. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. Or you know what? Maybe you know, I'm going to be in Dallas in you know, in April, and there's a lot of indie shows coming around there on Mania weekend. So maybe
I haven't been contacted by anybody yet for that weekend. But you know what? If it happens, that's fine. If it doesn't, I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Well, hit Ben up in his Twitter. You know, his DMs are open.
Sure are.
So Ben, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Big Trouble Ben Bishop. You. Yeah, no problem. And I've been Paul Fontaine. Check out the Dynamite Show on the Fight Game Media Patreon, patreon.com/FightGameMedia. Check out Big Trouble Ben Bishop in GSW, PWX, Invictus, wherever else you're going to see him. A couple of times on AEW Dark. So for Ben, I've been Paul, and this has been a special episode of The Dynamite Show.